Welcome to Passover. We're sad that you can't be all together for this Seder. It's been a tradition for many years that for this night we would be together as a community. You know, we spend one night at home with our families and one night we come to the bigger family. So this year, as we did last, because of the pandemic, we're coming home to you. The really good news is you didn't have to clean your house for us. So we're glad that we could be sharing the Seder with you. You have been sent the Haggadah so that you could follow along. The cover, in case you were worrying, if you got it from the office, looks like this, and the pages that will follow. So you can read along, you can sing along, you can celebrate with us. So Cantor, it is great that we can be here together. At least you and I get to share Passover.
Rabbi, you and I have been meeting on a regular basis.
For Passover.
For Passover.
So
for every holiday.
We get to celebrate lots. It's a treat to be able to do this together. So we're going to read through the service, and as you're watching this at your own Seder, please feel free, like I said, to read along or sing along and to celebrate with the foods that you have on your Seder plate. And I hope that the dinner will be great for everyone. This is an abbreviated event. We're going to go straight through. You are invited to break for dinner as you choose. Okay, so Cantor, we're going to be on page 1. How about, before we start reading, we express thanks that we're all here together. Hine ma tov.
Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad.
How good it is that we can be together. So over the course of this past year, our homes have become our havens from the pandemic of COVID and the plague of political, societal inhumanity. Even as the quarantine protected our lives from one, it only further alienated us from each other, causing the other. In the darkness of solitude, there is physical security and the perfect temperate for sowing fear and spiritual insecurity. As we welcome this holiday of freedom, we begin by bringing a new light into our homes, a warmth and a glow. Even as we have lost so many, we have weathered the pandemic, and it's time to heal the plague of inhumanity. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu lahadlik ner shel yom tov. That is the prayer that you will say as you will be lighting your holiday candles. Okay?
I forgot to set those up.
It's all good. It's daytime right now, so.
Right. It would be a blessing without integrity.
Right.
It was a deliberate.
So then we get to the symbols. Certainly we have the juice, the wine, whichever is from the grape, whether fermented or not. We drink of the wine or juice to remind us of the 4 promises of freedom that God announced to Israel as we walked free from Egypt. We drink to remind ourselves of the promises of freedom as yet unfulfilled.
So I'll read one, you'll read the other.
Sounds
okay?
great.
All right. I will bring you out from the suffering of Egypt, from your homes and quarantine, from bigotry and hate.
And I will save you from enslavement. With PPE and vaccines, we will be safe, and we will bring an end to the violence and oppression.
And I will deliver you from the fear of the pandemic and fear of the other.
And I will take you for me as a treasured human, and I will be your God.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'am, v'romemanu mikol hashon, asher kitshanu mitzvotav, vatiten lanu Adonai Eloheinu be'ahava, moedim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim l'sason, et yom hag hamatzot hazeh, zman chirutenu, mikra kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'charta, v'otanu kidashta mikol hamim, moedei kodeshecha b'simcha uv'sason hinchatanu, Baruch Ata Adonai, Mekadesh Yisrael, V'Hazmanim.
And we're thankful for being here. How about a Shechianu?
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu, Melech HaOlam, Shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. You know, we're not on Zoom, so you can sing with me. Ah, 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 amen. L'chaim.
The first of 4 sips or cups we will drink tonight. Before we get further into the liturgy, there's a tradition that we should celebrate. And we're going to talk about the symbols of freedom and the problems that we still face in this world. But I think I'd like to do something fun to begin.
Okay.
How about the frog song?
All right. One morning when Pharaoh woke in his bed, there were frogs on his nose, there were frogs on his toes.
I thought his head.
Wait, frogs.
Woke in his bed, frogs
on his head. There were frogs in his bed. That's right. One morning when Pharaoh woke in his bed, there were frogs on his head, there were frogs in the bed, frogs on his toes and frogs on his nose. You gotta hop around?
No.
Frogs here, frogs there. Frogs were jumping everywhere. Woo, that was an old retrieval.
Yes, but you did it well.
Thanks, Rabbi. You
So,
helped me.
The symbols of the Passover exist and evolve to speak to us in every generation. Passover is a festival celebrating a promise as yet unfulfilled. We learn that God cannot do what we won't do. We're mindful that peace can only become real when we return from our exiles from each other. Each of us holds the power to do justice in our hearts. It's time to partner with God to use the power for the good of all humanity.
Would you mind holding up the matzah, Rabbi?
I would be honored as you read.
We refer to the matzah as
It's in here somewhere.
alachma anya, the bread of affliction. We ate it as slaves in Egypt and as citizens of New Jersey. As if we fled from Egypt, we continue eating this unleavened, tasteless bread to remind us that we are all free. None of us can, until all of us are free, none of us can be. So as long as oppression exists, it is a threat to each of us. This bread of affliction our fathers ate in Egypt is appropriate fare for our generations as well. We are all hungry and needy. Over the past year, we've been forced to return to Spartan living. We pray that this year will bring us that redemption.
So I took this out of the middle. We have 3 loaves of matzah set for the meal. We break this middle one, hiding half for the afikomen. This is the dessert that our children will look for as the Seder will be coming to an end at some
They'll probably find it in a year after I hide
Right.
it.
And as we break the matzah, we remember that the only pathway to end this affliction is through our open hearts. We open our doors to all who are hungry, inviting them to dine at our table. So we eat matzah.
Should we say the blessing?
Please.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshan mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al achilat matzah.
Amen. So we eat the matzah, which is also bread, which is why we said both brachas.
You know how right before Purim, the Passover food comes out?
Mm-hmm.
This year turned out to be a good thing.
Yeah. Never get tired of matzah. There are symbols on the Seder plate. And we're going to go through each one. I like, that one better.
You can have that.
Okay.
I'll have this one.
So the shank bone, the zroa, is symbolic of the Paschal lamb offered as the Passover sacrifice in biblical times. Some communities use chicken head. Or one printed off the printer as a substitute. And vegetarian households may use beets or the Paschal yam.
No animals were sacrificed for this Seder. Okay, here you go. When I told Simon, you know, I was scrounging around a little for the...
This is parsley. Where's the parsley?
When I told
Okay.
Simon I was scrounging around for it, and what we had wasn't going to work out, he said, "Come, Mom, just go pick some grass out of the yard." But I thought I would help you out with this.
Okay.
Okay.
So, go ahead, read.
Karpas, the parsley is dipped into salt water during the Seder. The salt water serves as a reminder of the tears shed during Egyptian slavery. The dipping of a vegetable as an appetizer is said to reflect the influence of Greek culture. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri ha'adama.
Amen. In L'chaim?
Chaim?
So we have eggs out there, right?
Yeah, I had trouble
So,
peeling them.
Beitzah, the roasted egg, symbolizes the biblical festival sacrifice. It also serves as a symbol of spring. It's round to remind us of the cycle of life. We celebrate Passover both during a spring festival and to remind us of the cycles of our lives that should always end in freedom. So we have that.
Okay.
We have the horseradish, which serves as two things, the maror and the chazeret. So Cantor, if you'd read those, please.
Okay. The chazeret, lettuce, is often used in addition to the maror as a bitter herb, and authorities are divided on the requirement of the chazeret. Because, as has true today, Jews do not disagree or agree. So not all communities use it. Since the commandment in Numbers 9:11 to eat the Paschal lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs uses the plural bitter herbs, most Seders have a place for the chazeret. So that's why we have both.
Okay. And then maror.
The maror, the bitter herbs, symbolize the bitterness of Egyptian slavery. Maror is used in the Seder because of the commandment on Numbers 9:11 to eat the Paschal lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. That's the sandwich.
Well, we're almost there, because the other piece is the charoset. The apple, nuts, and spices ground together and mixed with wine are symbolic of the mortar used by Hebrew slaves to build Egyptian structures. It's sweet because we now use this mortar to build our own homes in our own communities. And so you're supposed to take a little bit of the charoset and a little bit of the horseradish and put it on some matzah.
Okay. Yeah, I got a fresh spoon for you.
There you go.
Okay.
And according to tradition, wise sage Hillel a couple thousand years ago understood that eating horseradish by itself was problematic if you wanted to continue to enjoy the Seder. And so he decided that you should make it into a sandwich with the matzah and the charoset, and that way, what do they say, a teaspoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to eat, how about the bracha for the maror, please?
Yes, this is Jewish cuisine at its finest. Here we go. The maror. Which one is that?
Right, next page. No, next page.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al achilat maror.
And then you eat that. There's a tradition that we tell the story of 4 children who demonstrate the 4 ways in which we experience knowledge in the world. That page that your left hand is on.
Found it finally.
The story of the 4 children reminds us of the great diversity that exists in our midst. Each of us has knowledge and talents unique and distinct from each other's blessings. Each of us also experience unique challenges as we walk through this world. At any given time, some of us are aware of both the blessings and the challenges, too distracted to pay attention to either, or jaded to know how to care about anything important, or too naive to understand much of it at all.
We call them 4 questions, but we ask only one at the Seder table. Why should I pay more attention tonight than to any other? In short, we respond with ceremonial answers about the foods we eat or the position in which we eat them. The rest of the Seder provides the more meaningful response. This night should not be different than any other night. Every night should be our night to think about how to heal the world and not just ourselves. Every night we remember that our slavery in Egypt ended, but our existence in an oppressive world is still too real.
So there's a song, a spiritual Go Down Moses, that reminds us of Moses going to Pharaoh and saying, "Let my people go." And that was the song that we used in the civil rights movement still, as a way of reminding us that we have to still speak to the oppressive and the oppressor, to let people go free. So Cantor, how about that?
When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
When Moses went to Pharaoh and God says, "Tell him, let my people go," Pharaoh refused. His heart hardened, and God rained 10 plagues over Egypt that disrupted society and disrupted lives. Tradition teaches that it's karma's response for Pharaoh's earlier decree of oppression and death against Israel. Please remember that Pharaoh decreed death to all male children, and that will unfortunately be where the plagues will end. And so as we read the news and experience the world around us, even while we appreciate the blessings that surround us, we have to acknowledge that we seem to live in a world that keeps us fearfully treading from one crisis to the next. It seems like every morning we wake up to a new peril: virus pandemics, debilitating illnesses and injuries, economic recessions, natural disasters, political insurrection, and the threat of local and international violence. We can feel helpless as events spin out of our control.
These plagues remind us that as we recklessly or willfully abuse each other and the earth, we invite long-term horrific consequences upon our children and their children. The cycle of plagues and the potentially devastating impact of these plagues can end only when we commit to loving and respecting all that God put into our lives and each other's life.
In these unsettling times, we can find our peace in a relationship with divinity, something beyond us in which we can find strength. We find strength in overcoming our fear and disdain of each other and returning to dignifying each other's humanity, yoking God's energy, holding on to each other's heart. These are the only ways to effectively restore hope and return us to the path of justice. So
I'll sing and then you translate.
Right, we're going to take your finger, and this is the second cup, by the way, and we diminish it. We're not supposed to drink the whole cup because we remember that the plagues upon this world diminish our joy. And so we don't waste the whole cup, but we diminish it. So with your finger, with each of the plagues, you'll put a drop onto your Seder plate. You are not allowed to lick your finger because that would be enjoying it, okay? So, Cantor?
Dam.
Blood, and for creating violence and war.
Svardeya.
Frogs, and for teaching hate and bigotry.
Kinim.
Lice, and for oppression of other people.
Arov.
Beasts, and for perverting justice.
Dever.
Pestilence, and for neglecting human needs.
Shechin.
Boils, and for polluting the earth.
Barad.
Hail, and for corrupting culture.
Arbe.
Locusts, and for neglecting our children.
Choshech.
Darkness, and for the erosion of freedom.
Makat Bechorot.
Killing the firstborn, and for the ignorance and arrogance that we accept in this world. Now we drink that second cup. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech
haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Now, many of us will have oranges on our Seder plates. As many symbols, they're now, the tradition continues to evolve that the oranges will read will represent, well, many families and congregations have added an orange to the Seder plate as a way of acknowledging the role of people who feel marginalized within the Jewish community. Professor Susanna Heschel explains that in the 1980s, feminists at Oberlin College placed a crust of bread on the Seder plate, saying, "There's as much room for a lesbian in Judaism as there is for a crust of bread on the Seder plate." Heschel adapted this practice, placing an orange on her family's Seder plate and asking each attendee to take a segment of the orange, make the blessing over the fruit, and eat it as a gesture of solidarity with the LGBTQ Jews and others who are marginalized within the Jewish community. They would spit out the seeds from the orange, and those seeds represent homophobia. And as I was alluding, in support of migrant workers, people are now putting cherry tomatoes, people are putting chocolate. And for a host of the justice reasons that exist out there, there are symbols, food symbols, that represent our need to pay attention. And so this traditional Seder plate may have its requisite number of holes or places for the traditional foods, but we'll find Seder tables lined with other dishes with all of these foods as well. We know that there's work ahead, and yet we stand on the shoulders of generations that have given us the tools and the impetus to continue that work. Pirkei Avot tells us that it's not our job to finish the task of healing the world, but we're not allowed not to work on it. And so we're thankful for all of the blessings that have come our way. Any one of them could have been enough to move us forward, and yet there are just so many. So if we can get a couple verses of Dayenu.
Ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. This is my family favorite. Ilu hichni sanu be'eretz Yisrael, hichni sanu be'eretz Yisrael, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. We have Torah and Shabbat.
Yep.
Ilu natan lanu et Torah, natan lanu et Torah, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu natan lanu et Shabbat, natan lanu et Shabbat, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
The word Dayenu means it's enough for us. And if you've ever been at a traditional Seder where they sing the 32 verses of Dayenu, you're ready to say Dayenu. It's enough already. But we were thankful today. We acknowledge the blessings of Torah, of Shabbat, of entry into the land of Israel, and for the blessings of creation. And there are so many other things that whether you sing it in the Hebrew or just go around the table and ask people to talk about the things that we're thankful for, that any one of them would be enough.
Just enough
to change our world, and yet we have all of them that they're good. This would be the traditional place where we would break the Seder and have dinner. And after dinner, well, during dinner, someone is usually hiding the afikomen for the kids to find it. And they get a prize afterwards, because the Seder really can't traditionally end until you have found it. But after dinner, there's a prayer, a blessing after the meal. It's Birkat Hamazon, and it is to be found in the Haggadah. It's all that Hebrew, and it's transliterated on the next page. And if you remember it from camp or from other gatherings, please feel free to sing it. There is a form of grace after the meal that's very short. Baruch atah Adonai hazan et hakol. Thank you, God, for giving us the food.
Amen.
Amen. So you can do that, or like I said, Birkat Hamazon. But having a full stomach reminds us that there's so much going on, and we often take for granted that we get this food. So we have to remember that the world needs healing, and it has to begin with us. And so without the need for metaphysical speculation or religious labeling, Each of us can bring redemption by improving the state of our own souls, and we can do it in the following ways. Have a sense of meaning and purpose.
Love and be loved.
Self-esteem, sense your own worth.
Tap into your inner peace and joy.
Be of service to others.
Demonstrate a generosity of spirit.
From the East and the West, we speak of the beauty and the value of the human soul and the potential of the human condition. According to our Jewish tradition, Eliyahu Hanavi, the prophet Elijah, didn't die. He ascended to heaven on God's fiery chariot.
Many of our tradition stories of restoration focus on Elijah's return to earth. He often appears as a lowly beggar to see if humanity has done the work necessary for redemption. A family who shows kindness even to the beggar demonstrates the goodness necessary to heal the world. As we open the door and drink the third cup, we believe that our hearts can and will open, so that Elijah may enter and lead a toast to freedom, the dawn of the Messianic age.
This is Elijah's cup. It is filled, and we hope that as we would open the door at a Seder for Elijah to come, that the cup will be diminished, because if so, then we teach that this coming year, the announcement of the Messianic age will happen, and we'll be able to live in peace. So as we ask Elijah to take a sip, we will as well. But how about let's welcome Eliyahu Hanavi first.
Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhera v'yamenu, Yahavo Eleinu, Imoshiach ben David, Imoshiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
Borei peri hagafen l'chaim. Okay.
In addition to Elijah's cup, we have Miriam's cup, this beautiful cup here. It's already seeded with some water because we know that there's already grace and majesty in this world. And the custom celebrates Miriam's role in the deliverance from slavery and that her help throughout the wandering in the wilderness. You know, she was the one responsible for finding all the wells that kept and sustained us. So we place this cup next to Elijah's, and each of us are going to pour a little bit of our water into the cup to remember that we're responsible for taking care of everyone. We see the pouring of each person's water as a symbol of everyone's individual responsibility to respond to issues of social injustice. So with that.
Après vous. Now, as for next year in Jerusalem, I've actually been thinking about that. And we absolutely do pray traditionally that we will celebrate next year in Jerusalem. But I think all of us are also praying that the Jerusalem we celebrate next year is just to be together in a healthy way.
The word Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, means a vision of wholeness and peace. And so Jerusalem may be the name of a city halfway around the world,
Right.
but the Yerushalayim I pray to be part of is this table with more of us around and celebrating together. So
The call which we end the Seder cannot be taken literally. There is no commandment or suggestion that we should be celebrating Passover somewhere else next year. Jerusalem is more than a geographical site. Jerusalem is the prayer for peace, wholeness, and wholesomeness that will determine the ultimate healing of the world. At the very table we are sitting, may we join in person next year and remember being with each other is the reason why we love this place and bring with us stories of beautiful healing in the world with which we share.
may we each express our thanks for having shared in this evening's meal and conversation and in tomorrow's quest to free the world. Our final taste of the evening reminds us that freedom will only come when we demonstrate our commitment to each other and to growing our circles of light, enlightenment, and compassion and love. L'chaim, and to life. One last sip from our cups. Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen l'chaim.
Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek.
Chazek.
Strength, strength, let us strengthen each other.
Let us all have the strength to work through our daily tasks. Allow us the health and good fortune to let us join next year at Seders all over the world. We conclude remembering that Jerusalem will be wherever we gather as one people, Am Echad, Im Lev Echad, as one people with one heart, kindling the spark which drives us to Torah.
Amen and amen.
Amen.
So we say Lashana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Before you sing us out,
I'll wait.
I would like to just thank everyone for being with us. May it be a Zissen Pesach. May it be joyous. May it be redeeming. And may, having gone through the stories of oppression and freedom, may we commit ourselves to doing the work beyond our own needs, to remember that if one is oppressed, none of us are free. Next year, I praise Jerusalem for everyone.
Lashana Haba'a, Lashana Haba'a, Lashana Haba'a, B'Yerushalayim. Lashana Haba'a, Lashana Haba'a, Lashana Haba'a, B'Yerushalayim. Lashana Haba'a, Lashana B'Yerushalayim. Lashana Haba'a, Lishana b'Yerushalayim, Lishana haba'a, Lishana haba'a, Lishana haba'a b'Yerushalayim.
So with that, y'all come back next year. We want to see you here.
Amen.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Happy Passover.
Happy Passover.
Thank you, Cantor.
Thank you, Rabbi.